Hello and God bless you guys, and welcome to part three. Real quick, we're going to do just a quick review, and I got some new information that I want to share from my sister God's Gifts channel. Sent me some information, so thank you to her. And I want to get to that. I want to do a quick review, and I want to talk about convergence a little bit before we get into this. So as you know, we're talking about Skinwalker Ranch and how I believe that this is somehow Satan's Garden of Eden. All right, this is where he's manifesting things. Everything supernatural you can think of, paranormal that you can think of, has happened on this ranch. Every single thing, and it has me, wondering what's going on in this place, why this place, and I think it goes back to the Garden of Eden and Satan's wicked twist on that. We talked about Esau. We talked about Adam, how they both have ties to the color red. We know that we talked about how Esau, there was a mighty work done in Esau with Rebekah in the mother's womb. We know his name is very important. It means to do an evil work, to exercise power or sovereignty, to do evil, to bring about something, to destroy something, to produce. All right, an evil work. Satyr goes right back to the descriptive word of Esau: hairy, devil, satyr. We talked about a little bit about the Beast of Bray Road and how this wolfman creature has been seen since 1936 up until the 80s and the 90s. And of course, Gadara was one of the words that it stated. That takes us back to the evil work, to the manifestation in the womb of these things. So we talked about the Beast of Bray Road. We talked about how this goes back to CERN, and he is on a cauldron, all right, which... well, my computer's frozen, which is a pot of flesh where I believe this manifestation, where this DNA exchange is taking place. And how he is God of the animals, and he wears these torques, which I believe is the DNA strand. He's controlling the DNA or manipulating the DNA. Also, the Lord of the Animals, or the Lord of the Wild Things, which are all these transhuman type creatures, all different types of creatures rolled up into one. Cauldrons used in witchcraft. Then we get into this a little bit and what's on the cauldron itself. And we talked about the torque, which again, DNA. But on the cauldron itself, it has these entities destroying this livestock with the sword. It shows them cutting. Well, it doesn't show them cutting, but it shows a sword at their neck. And also on the cauldron itself, in the centerpiece, is this bull that's laid down. The genitalia there, which obviously goes back to the genitalia, is also one of the prime things taken during these cattle mutilations, as if you read about them. All right, the genitalia, the eyes, the ears, the buttocks. It's pretty disgusting what they're doing. But anyway, also again, you have the sword with this entity up here. And this ties back to Skinwalker Ranch, because they've had these cattle mutilations. They've had all these things going on. Obviously, a hoax doesn't add up because it's been going on for over 200 years. We talked a little bit about how the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were both gardeners. They were the first ranch hands, essentially. They Adam had to name all the animals, and they dwelt with the animals. They grew crops. They were tillers of the earth. They were, this is the descriptive word used for Adam, which means farmer, essentially, which exactly what this ranch is. It's an evil playoff of the Garden of Eden. We talked about where it was. It's in northeast. It's in the Uinta Basin, I think it is. I got a picture coming up. I'll show you. There's been movies about it. Obviously, History Channel about it. And this was an excerpt from the book that I just read that they attributed as the Garden of Eden. 4 rivers in the Garden of Eden, and there's also 4 rivers in the Uinta River Basin right here. Now the ranch is located just north of here, right by this Highway 191, I believe. All right, kind of up in this area. And then, of course, the Devil's Garden in Moab, Utah has these horned Cernunnos type entities that we saw. Now let's talk a little bit about convergence, okay? What's happening on the earth is everything is converging. Everything's going to be sent here to be judged, all right? The fallen angels, everything going to be sent here to be judged. If you read Psalms 18, it talks about the Lord coming down to the earth and him coming down and manifesting things here on earth. We also know we're waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. We also know that Satan, on the playoff of this, is also manifesting here on this earth his wicked kingdom. And it's a birthing process. So the first thing in the birthing process is obviously contractions. But right when you begin to have the actual birthing take place, first off, the water breaks, which I think is going to be the dams. There's going to be several dams that are going to be broken. One being the Hoover, I believe one probably over in Egypt. There's all kinds of water issues there. And if you read, I think it's Isaiah 19 that talks about the Egyptians rising up. And I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, Ethiopia has a dam that controls part of the river flow of the Nile. And they're getting really upset with that dam. And there's contention there. So, but then again, either way, and then of course you have the dam in California that was close to overflowing, and it's peaking. So all these dams are key, and it talks about in the Bible how the waters are going to break forth, and which I believe is part of this birthing process. Of course, has to be. But anyway, what I'm saying is, as things are getting closer and the darkness increases, so does the light. But if you've looked around, all these things have come to a everything's spinning up greater. Like, I'll give you an example here in Georgia, where I live. Bigfoot was never talked about in this area, but now there's all kinds of sightings of Bigfoot in this area. We also have the Bigfoot Museum now in this area. And I'm like, this is Georgia, Bigfoot here in Georgia, really? And you would be surprised at what people are seeing and reporting. Again, you got to be part of this not clique really, but you got to be kind of part of this information feed. But these sightings are picking up drastically. The Dogman sightings, the creature, weird, alien abductions, all this type of stuff is greatly increasing. And also, with that, knowledge is increasing. We have the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have people teaching, now, the Genesis 6 thing that was, back in 2012, not many people had heard of that or really understood the fallen angels meeting with the daughters and women. Now it's kind of becoming, mainstream, so to speak, so all this information is coming out. And with that, Satan is also, manifesting his things, which are this type of stuff, going on in the world, the orbs, the cattle mutilations really haven't picked up, but there's all kinds of things that are happening that are coming to a convergence, and everything's coming to a convergence here on this planet. And as the darkness increases, the light also will increase as well. All right. As evil increases, now you're going to see miracles manifest, and things start to occur. Anyway, so with that, what I found the other day, or what I didn't find, but what was given to me by God's gifts was a word, a Strong's Concordance word that really struck home with me, and that's what we're going to kind of get into. And it goes back to Genesis 15, which Abraham has this vision of a weird vision, and I don't have it completely figured out. I'm going to tell you that straight up, but what I did find is there are some very weird similarities between cattle mutilations and Genesis 15, and that's what I'm going to kind of highlight. Now, Abraham was brought up in the land of Ur and of the Chaldees. Now, the Chaldees, which is interesting about the Chaldees, they worshipped chariots and horsemen, which made no sense to me. And I'm like, what? Maybe that was at a UFO? Chariots and horsemen that they were worshiping. But that's, when you go to the wiki page, that's exactly what it says. In fact, I'll pull it up real quick just to show you. Okay, it kind of goes back to the Kassites, all right, which were in the same area. Here's Ur, all right, which were in the same area, all right, this is the area of the Garden of Eden. Okay, we'll get into that here in a little bit. But anyway, you have this and these Kassites worshipped right here. The chariot and the horse, which the Kassites worshipped, first came to use in Babylonia at this time. Very strange. Why would you worship a vehicle and a horse, something that you can make? I mean, yeah, we make idols of wood and everything else, but this seems very strange wording to me. Almost like there's something more here that they're not quite saying. But anyway, it's, different information. But anyway, so yeah, this was the Garden of Eden here, and this was the land of Ur where Abraham was raised. Now, Abraham was also put in a furnace. If you read the book of, I believe it's Jasher, talks about him being put in a furnace, just like the Daniel rendition of the boys being put in the furnace for not worshiping the idol. And he was taken out of that fire. And of course, the story from God raised him up from that point. And the Chaldees were also fire worshippers. So, yeah, you have the Chaldees, you have what we just talked about, and, so what's really going on here? And we're not getting the complete picture, folks. Understand this is all circumstantial stuff, but the Chaldees were definitely fire worshippers. That's evident. What we just read about the Kissites, which also grew up in the same area, worshipped horses and chariots, which just doesn't make sense to me. So again, we're building our case. We have the land of Garden of Eden right here, which is just to the southeast. What's going on? Is God trying to show us something here? So God tells him, he says, look now towards heaven and tell the stars if you're able to number them. And he said, so shall your seed be. So what he's doing is he's telling Abraham to look up. Look up. Those stars up there is going to be like your seed. All right. He also says the sands on the shore in a different part of the Bible. But what I'm trying to show you here is this is our true inheritance, the heavens. All right. Israel on earth is a symbol for the heavens. When we pray, Father, on earth as it is in heaven, what that does is that tells him, and that asks him to manifest the things on earth so that we can understand the heavenly things. And that's exactly what Israel is. God's not going to divide the heavens for Satan and his fallen angels to have part of it. And he's going to expel them to where? The earth, all right? The last heaven, the atmosphere, to this planet. All right? In our dwelling place, we're not going to get Israel as our dwelling place. We're going to have the heavens. All right? And that's so important. People don't catch on to that, but that's so important. So that's what he's telling them. It's kind of like, hey, look up. Kind of knucklehead, look up, look up. That's your real home. That's where you're really going to reside. That's your real inheritance. Right now, I got to show you this piece of earth, that grows the most beautiful things. It's the Garden of the Middle East, to kind of symbolize what's really going to be given to you eventually. Okay. So sand here on earth, but in the stars we have heaven for the complete picture of our inheritance. So means fire and light. So we talked about, they worshiped fire. And that kind of just comes into play here in a little bit. We'll talk about that. So flame of fire is what they worshipped. And then the other group worshipped chariots and horsemen. All right, now chariots and horsemen, generally, you see those chariots, talks about Elijah being taken away on a chariot. Was it a UFO? Was it a chariot? We don't know. Either way, something to think about, right? So at some point during this vision, all right, or at some point during this conversation, a strange vision comes over Abraham and darkness falls upon him. The Lord tells him he will be a stranger in a strange land. Now everyone wants to attribute this to being Egypt. Again, on earth as it is in heaven. All right, our tormentors now are not flesh and blood, but what are they? Principalities, powers, and rulers of darkness in heavenly places. Okay. So he's going to serve in this land. He's going to be a stranger in this land. All right. This, just like the Israelites were a stranger in Egypt, so too we are strangers here under the pressure of the fallen angels, a land where you will serve and be afflicted, We're spiritually afflicted all the time. So, of course, yes, this is about Egypt, but there is a heavenly perspective to this if you look at it, just like the stars we talked about right here. Okay? Look up, knucklehead, look up. And you will serve. Of course, this is Egypt, okay? Who are our real tormentors? Again, we do not battle flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers of darkness in heavenly places. So this vision, in my opinion, okay, includes what I believe is a cauldron, an orb, and dissected livestock. Not only that, but it also contains a hybrid. Let's take a look at it. So the Lord has him gather a heifer, a goat, and a ram, a turtle dove, and a pigeon. And he says, I want you to divide these in the middle. In other words, cut them in half. Lay each piece against the other, but the birds divide not. And when the fowls came down to the carcasses, Abraham drove them away. Now, excuse me, fowls always represent wicked spirits, okay, which I believe we are going to help do, in the days ahead by invoking the name of Jesus Christ, driving away the fowls. So then we get to this verse 12, and we're going to come back to it, but just keep it in the back of your mind. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. Why? What do we have going on here? God's talking to him saying, hey, you're going to have the stars. You're going to, your children will be like the stars in heaven. I want you to take this stuff, divide it in the midst. The birds divide not. And then when the sun went down, a deep horror fell on him. Okay. So just to give you a picture of what the Lord is, the vision in showing, you have these things laid in half and the other half on the other side. Right? They're cut asunder. Okay. And then in the middle comes a torch and a pot. A torch and a pot. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp. Smoking furnace is transcribed in many different ways. Some say pot, some say, I think some say cauldron. But either way, it's not a big deal. Smoking furnace and a burning lamp. When we look at smoking furnace, this is what we see. It's literally a vapor, anger, smoking, metaphor, kind of like just what it says. Furnace part, smoke to be angry, to be wroth, fume, furious, figurative, angry, smoke. And then also we have a furnace, a pot, portable stove for cooking, which goes back to our cauldron that we talked about. Smoking and pot together. This goes back to our CERN cauldron, the desire for evil, fire pot. What about a burning lamp? So the burning lamp comes back to fire, burning fire, flaming hot, supernatural fire, firebrand, torch, burning flame. If you were to describe an orb back then, could this be how you would describe it? Supernatural fire. So now we got two things at a minimum. Well, three things. We have mutilated cattle, or divided cattle, and we also have a pot, which we talked about, and we also have our orb. And to boot, we have the Garden of Eden, which is right next to the land of Ur. And we have a history of chariot and horseman worship, as well as fire worship. So what are we seeing? Okay. So when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a horror, great darkness fell upon him. And lo, a horror, 367, which is an Ema from 366. Fright, concrete, and idle, or as a bugbear. Well, what's a bugbear? That's where it gets interesting. A bugbear is a legendary creature or type of hobgoblin compared to the boogeyman, which in folklore is historically used in some cultures to frighten disobedient children. This is from not Wiki, but Pinterest, a drawing of a bugbear, which looks exactly like what many people are seeing. Legendary creature. Legendary. Hybrid. Part human. Supernatural. Animal. What has been done will be done again, right? Minotaur, Cyclops, all those different things. They weren't making them up. And we're seeing them now. Because the wickedness is so great in this country, in this world. Excuse me. What I thought was really interesting as well as I was going back over the video. In 2016, Bigelow sold Skinwalker Ranch for $4.5 million to a company called Adamantium Holdings. Unknown origin. Adamantium Holdings. Adam. God bless.